absorption. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanatha
Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. Alle Ehre sei den versammelten Gottgeweihten. Alle Ehre sei den versammelten Gottgeweihten. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We are continuing Srimad Canto 4, Chapter 28. Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. Text 5. Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Tasyang pravityamanayam.
Tasyam pravityamanayam.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Please chant.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Abhimani Puranjanaha.
Avapuru vidhangstapan.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha.
Kutumbi mamatakulaha. Möchtest du nicht? Probieren.
Tasyam pravyachatam nyayam.
Tasyam prabhidyamanayam.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Abhimani Puranjana.
Avapuru vidhangstapam.
Avaporu vidhangstapan.
Kutumbi mamatakula.
Kutumbi mamatakula. Tasyam,
Tasyam
when the city prabhidyamanayam
prapidyamanayam.
was put into different difficulties. Abhimani,
Abhimani,
too much absorbed.
too much absorbed.
Puranjanaha,
Puranjana,
King Puranjana.
King Puranjana.
Avapa,
Avapa,
achieved.
achieved.
Uru,
Uru,
many.
many.
Vidhan,
Vidam,
varieties.
varieties.
Tapan,
Tapan,
pains. Kutumbi,
Kutumbi,
family man.
family man.
Mamata akulaha,
Mamata Akula,
too much affected by attachment to family.
Too much affected
by attachment to family.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. When the city was thus endangered by the soldiers and Kala Kanya, King Puranjana, being overly absorbed in affection for his family, was placed in difficulty by the attack of Yavana Raja and Kala Kanya. Purport. When we refer to the body, we include the external gross body with its various limbs, as well as the mind, intelligence, and ego. In old age, these all become weak when they are attacked by different diseases. The proprietor of the body, the living soul, becomes very sad and not being able to use the field of activities properly. In Bhagavad Gita it is clearly explained that the living entity is the proprietor of this body, kshetragya, and that the body is the field of activities, kshetra. When a field is overgrown with thorns and weeds, it becomes very difficult for the owner to work it. That is the position of the spirit soul when the body itself becomes a burden due to disease. Extra burdens are placed on the body in the form of anxiety and general deterioration of the bodily functions. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumiletam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitangscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyata Dedesha Tarine Tasyam Pravidyamanayam Abhimani Puranjanaham Avapuru Vidhang Stapan Kutumbi Mamatakulam. When the city was thus endangered by the soldiers and Kala Kanya, King Puranjana, being overly absorbed in affection for his family, was placed in difficulty by the attack of Yavana Raja and Kala Kanya. So we are now in the last chapter of the pastime of King Puranjana. And now the whole story of King Puranjana takes a sad turn, which is mostly the same with a materialistic person, with all the materialistic people in this world. They live many years in the illusion of enjoyment. And then when old age comes and death approaches, then they find themselves in a very difficult and sad situation. And so Puranjana, he's now, we can see it through Puranjana's story. So I think we all know the pastime by now. So many times we repeat it from the beginning. So I think I will not do that. We know where we are. Yeah. So I was not really preparing so much for the class, so I thought we can just speak about some basics and try to really maybe deeply reflect about this basic point that we are not this body. Especially because Srila Prabhupada, in the very beginning of the purport, he speaks about the body, and he says when we refer to the body, we include the external gross body with its various limbs, as well as the mind, intelligence and ego. Meaning that the gross and subtle body both are bodies, and both are kshetragya, and thus different from the spirit soul. Both are kshetra. Kshetra means the field of activities, and different from the kshetragya. Gya means the one who knows the field, which is the soul. And we have heard it a million times that you are not this body, you are a spirit soul. Srila Prabhupada, he used to repeat this point again and again in his classes, and we are hearing it again and again when we listen to his classes, and it's very difficult to actually realize that we are not this body. And this analogy of a king living in the kingdom, which is given here in the story of Puranjana, is very powerful in the sense that we can actually imagine a king in his kingdom, and by imagining or by meditating about this analogy, this allegory, I always allegory. Allegory. We, by deeply contemplating, reflecting, meditating about this allegory, we can understand better how we are not the body, but we are the spirit soul. Because the king, usually living in the kingdom, which is yesterday we spoke about kshatriya, when during lunch we spoke about what a real kshatriya means, and we know that the king, he is a kshatriya, and some symptoms of the kshatriya, the king, are that the king is actually controlling the whole kingdom. He identifies with the whole kingdom. He identifies with his wife, with the children, which includes the prince and the princess, maybe. He identifies with the army. He identifies with all the citizens, and within all the citizens there's so many different people, and he identifies with him. He feels responsible for them. He feels responsible for their happiness. He feels responsible if they are in distress. And that's how a real king functions, a real kshatriya. He will have this very strong identification. And that's why a person who has the tendency of a kshatriya, he will receive that responsibility to take care of everyone. Because him having such a tendency, mentality, he can protect, if he's trained and qualified, he can protect all of them in a very nice way. And So similarly, like the king identifies with all these different people and all the things in the kingdom, the spirit soul identifies with all the different parts of the body. So the Prabhupada explains the external gross body, which includes the senses. We know we have 5 working senses: 2 arms, 2 legs, the genitals, the anus and the mouth. And then we have 5 knowledge acquiring senses: the eyes, the nostrils, the nose, the ears, the touch and
Tongue.
the tongue. The tongue. So the soul identifies first of all with this. Then the soul identifies with the mind. The mind. The Indians, actually the mind is here. We once had a discussion about this. The mind, and then the intelligence, which I also don't know where it is, and the false ego. And similarly, like the king, because of controlling that whole field, the kingdom, and identifying with it, because he's the king, and as king, he identifies himself with the kingdom. Without the kingdom, there is no king. So meaning, he's seeing his own identity in relation to the kingdom. And that's why he's so attached to all these things and want to make sure that everything works properly and everyone is happy. And similarly, the soul, also being in this body, identifies with the senses, identifies with the body, with the mind, intelligence, false ego, and wants to make sure all of these different parts of the kingdom, of the body, are happy. And on different levels we have different kinds of happiness. How do we experience happiness on the platform of the body?
Through enjoying
Contact of the senses with the sense objects.
Contact of the senses with the sense objects. So this is because the senses are the body, the gross body, then that becomes also the grossest type of happiness. Having sex, eating, sleeping is an interesting one. Smelling.
looking for something beautiful.
Go watch a movie. Yeah, movie is also maybe another level. Mind, yeah. So that's the body, very gross. And then there is happiness on the platform of the mind. How do we experience happiness on the platform of the mind?
Thinking of the future and past.
Mm-hmm.
This brings happiness. Not a speculation. Yeah, you can think about experience which you have and gave you joy.
Yeah. The mind is described as sankalpa and vikalpa. The functions means he's accepting and rejecting. So the mind is basically feeling happy if he can accept something which he considers good and reject something which he feels is bad. And of course, now it's very easy, to say, to touch something nice, to eat something nice, taste something nice, or to see something nice. That's very easy to understand. But then now we come to the mind, and later we will come to the intelligence and false ego, and they all interact with each other. They interact with each other, meaning the happiness on the platform of the senses will depend on how the mind is shaped and how the intelligence is shaped and the ego and how they interact. Maybe a very simple example can be sex, no. As a non-devotee, let's say you're a non-devotee before coming to Krishna consciousness, and you enjoy sex life. And then you come, and all of a sudden, due to some good fortune, you hear that sex life actually will bring you suffering. And then even though it's still the same pleasure as being the genitals, as example, coming in contact with, that being the pleasure in itself, but because of your intelligence being now sharp, you will not be happy anymore. You might feel pleasure, the same pleasure, but you will not feel happy because you know too much. You already know that it will not bring you any happiness. So then they interact with each other. So happiness on the platform of the mind becomes more subtle, and even some time ago I remember hearing somebody speak about the phenomena that somebody goes to the movies, and then often when we go to the movies will show some very sad scenes, no? But it's not like when the sad scene comes and people actually sometimes people they cry when they watch the movie, or they feel this because they're feeling this emotion. It's not they walking out. No, they're staying, because even the sadness or something which you don't want, it also is some kind of happiness actually. I don't remember who it was, but he was making the point. So even accepting and rejecting something, it's both giving some kind of these emotions, even the negative emotions in a way, lamentation, they give some kind of happiness. And then happiness on the platform of the intelligence. For example, if you read a book, even I can read devotional literature and then I start to see the connection between certain points, I understand, then I feel some happiness. It gives me some happiness. And platform of the false ego, how does that give happiness?
I'm in center. Everybody
I'm in center.
Looks to me.
Yes. Yeah, and this is we can analyze the world, and we can see different living entities have different kinds of bodies. If you take the example of the false ego, if you compare a human with, let's say, a cat, a human being, when it comes into the assembly of other human beings, the false ego will be very active. No, how do other people perceive me? Do they respect me? Am I doing good? But then if you put a cat in the room, a cat is not so much on the platform of false ego, it may be looking for some food, just more on the central platform. And in this way we can actually analyze that different bodies are present. The cat also has a false ego, also has an intelligence, also has a mind, senses, but then the senses are more strong. And then again, if you see that's why human beings sometimes they can do things, they can neglect their body, they can even neglect their mind, just because on the platform of the false ego they have a very big attachment.
The false ego is always active in all different levels of joy. Otherwise, it needs a person who needs this joy. If you enjoy on the gross level, somebody has to realize it, and the senses cannot realize anything. Only they give this Eindrücke.
But I think all of them are always active, But then the soul, actually it's always the soul who enjoys one part of the body. When I eat, then I enjoy my tongue.
Yes.
It's in one place in one book of Prabhupada. I remember when I read that the first time, we enjoy the body. I was like, we enjoy the body? That we enjoy the food, we enjoy, but actually we are enjoying the body. And so then different bodies, they focus their consciousness more on different parts, like the cat wants to eat something nice, but the ego is also present.
Yes, it has.
But it's more in the back, no? But for example, a human being can forget about eating and sleeping, even though one feels tired and one feels hungry, because the ego, as an example, I want to do something where others respect me and worship me. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Shishi Gornitai Ki Jai. But then a cat's ego is much simpler. You cannot motivate the cat. You do something very great, and then the whole world will. Let's say a cat walks in and takes kartals and starts to do kirtan. The cat will become world famous. But you cannot tell a cat, because a cat is so much absorbed in the senses that it will not even. Yeah. So that's quite interesting. We, as devotees, and I want to speak about this just now, and then I will wrap it up. Kirtan as an example. We try to be devotees, and then, let me sing very nicely, so I get the respect from others, and they will think I have a lot of devotion, and I can sing very nice melody. So this is something I wanted to mention. If we practice devotional service, we should become very introspective in whatever we do, trying to see our body, trying to see especially our subtle body. Like when I sit on the Vyasasana and I sit down, I should be very alert. I should see, okay, now my ego is coming. My ego is telling me, I'm a nice devotee, I know a lot, and now let me show them. This is something if you're introspective, I can honestly say this is going on. The ego is working. Or if I'm asked to lead a kirtan, then I take the mridanga, I take the kartals, and then I should be very much observative. What's happening now? And we can hear different things, voices, who let me sing that melody, and in a way so that everybody will appreciate me. If we are very alert, we can observe these things. And I think that's the first step to situate oneself in the kshetra gya. That, okay, maybe the ego is still here, the ego is still screaming, let's be the best, let's perform in the best way, but at least now I can clearly separate myself from it. And then I can observe, I can even follow the ego or the mind.
You have to say false ego, because there is also an ego.
The false ego.
Yeah, otherwise you mix these two egos.
The false ego, I can also follow the false ego. Even if I observe it, I might be. But then gradually we should detach ourselves. And so, we hear here about Puranjana, how he's now in this situation at death, and he basically gets attacked, and he has the choice. He can just walk out of the door and say, I don't have a chance, and anyway, I have something better to do outside, so let me just go. But the problem is, Puranjana is so much attached to the kingdom because his wife and his children, they having so many desires in the kingdom, and because he loves them so much that he will not leave, he will stay. But these attacks from the Yavanaraj and Kalakanya, he's too weak to defend himself. So this is a very painful situation. He cannot leave because he's too attached. At the same time, when he stays, he will be defeated, and all of his family members and the kingdom will be defeated. And we can soberly think about it, that let's say this would happen to me right now. Kalakanya would come right now. Yavanaraj would come right now and just drag me out of this body. Then how would I react? How would I react? What will happen with my body? What will happen with my mind? With my intelligence? Where is my false ego or my ego gonna go? If it's my ego, then immediately, finally, back home, back to Godhead. If the false ego comes, no, but let's say it happens to me, but I'm still young and I can enjoy. I had so many desires. And So in this way, by contemplating, reflecting, by doing this as a sadhana, we can become very much aware of what's happening within us, and we can assess, okay, I'm standing here, or I'm standing there, and this is my attachment, and that is a problem, and I have to make a plan how I can overcome that attachment, how I'm not addicted to sense gratification, how I'm not addicted to other kinds of material happiness like knowledge or respect, followers, enjoying the opposite sex. In this way we can introspect and reflect, where is my attachment? And by practicing the process, we said how we should become very much introspective in whatever we do. If I go to the kitchen and cook, or give a class, or lead kirtan, do arati, whatever I do, to see what's happening within me, and then by observing, to make a decision. Do I want to follow the demand of my mind, or do I want to follow the demand of my ego, or my maybe false ego, or demand of my contaminated intelligence? But how do we get the strength to become the observer? That's a good question. Because it's not that one can just walk into the door and say, open the book and read, oh, I'm not this body, and then immediately realize, oh, I'm not this body, I'm not, actually, all of a sudden I can see my ego, false ego, I can see my intelligence. Because we are so close to it, we cannot see it. We think, that's me. And how is this done? It's being done by nourishing our Kshetragya, the observer, the soul, who we actually are. We have to revive the soul. And by reviving the soul, then the soul becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes more bright, and we can all of a sudden see all the things clearly. We can see it. Before we couldn't see, because the soul is so small, but then the false ego is so big, and the material mind is so big, that I don't see myself, I just see these things, and that's who I am. But if we act on the platform of the soul, then the soul becomes more prominent, more active, and all of a sudden I see myself identifying with the soul and not with the false ego anymore, not with the mind, not with the senses. And this is being done by just practicing the process, by chanting, by listening, by worshipping the deities, by doing service. Simply by following, we can realize who we actually are, a servant of Krishna. By acting as a servant of Krishna, we can realize I'm a servant of Krishna. Even though I don't realize I'm a servant of Krishna, if I act as a servant of Krishna, it will all of a sudden come. Slowly it will come. And how can we practice properly? By staying in the association of devotees. Because our soul is so small, our soul has, like a plant who has not received any water, it has shrunk. It's almost dead. So we cannot revive it ourselves. We need the association of other devotees. We have to engage in the Sankirtan Yagya. We have to fully depend on other devotees and their association and the program that is happening within the association of devotees. Shravanam Kirtan. So it's a matter of faith. How much faith do we have in this process? And then if we have faith and simply stick to this process with full conviction, then we can prepare ourselves for that moment where we have to leave the body, and that will be the final test. See if we still are attached to this body and have to come back again, one more life, or maybe two more life, or three more life, or so many more lifetimes, or if we can free ourselves, go back home, back to Godhead. And I just wanted to share yesterday, it's nicely in connection with this discussion. Yesterday I was listening to Prabhupada memories of Rupanuga Prabhu. Rupanuga Prabhu is one of the first Prabhupada disciples. He joined 1966 in New York, and he's very old now, so just interviewed him last year or maybe this year, and he was quoting one purport. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to look it up, otherwise I could have read, where Prabhupada describes a pure devotee. And he was making that point because he was saying, when Prabhupada was here, nobody thought that Prabhupada was there and we were all here. That's what he said. Nobody ever thought about, he said, nobody thought I'm a Vaishnava during that time. Everybody knew Prabhupada is a Vaishnava and I'm an aspiring Vaishnava. And then he said, I want to read to you the description of a Vaishnava by Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada in his purport writes, a Vaishnava, a pure devotee, doesn't have a material body. A Vaishnava never lives in the material body. A Vaishnava doesn't live in the material world, and the Vaishnava never gets in touch with material nature. These kind of points he was making. And the Vaishnava lives in the spiritual world. A Vaishnava lives in Vrindavan. And somehow I found it very powerful because our ego and mind is telling us so many things that, oh, I'm getting more advanced, but we are in the material world. All of us, we are still in the material world. We are not situated in Vrindavan Dham. And only when one is fully situated in the identity in Vrindavan Dham as a servant of Krishna, surrounded by all these devotees in eternal blissful life, then one is a pure devotee. And that should be ideally happen before we leave the body. To situate ourselves in the pure identity, I'm a servant of Krishna, and actually realize that identity. Or at least that at the time of death, this will be like the final cut, that here Kala Kanya comes And now I can know how is that when death comes, then the pure devotee, he steps on the head of moksha or Yamuna Kili. Of what? On the head of who? Of death. Yeah, right. That maybe we don't realize fully during this lifetime, but then when we die, then we can take the last step and let go, and by stepping on the head of death, come back to Godhead. And this is such a nice mission we have in this life, no? That we have such a great undertaking, we have a mission, we want to free ourselves from that prison house of the material world, which basically means our material body. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, this quote that you just mentioned, description of the pure Vaishnava, I kind of find it hard to comprehend. So, for one, it's difficult to, definitely difficult to judge others. I mean, we can't really judge if somebody, or what kind of consciousness they have. And then the other thing is also, how do you really define? You know, if you're in Vrindavan, you don't have a material body. So in one sense, you know, Prabhupada said that temple is like Vrindavan. It's a holy dham, so you live in the temple, then you live in Vrindavan. And the other thing is also, if you eat only prasadam is transcendental, your body is made of the prasadam, then your body is also spiritual. So I'm just trying to figure out what are the how do you really comprehend this concept?
Well, there's this example of the consulate, and you know, there is embassy. There is India, and this is India. When I'm in India, but then there is an embassy, and it also actually India, but it's not it's Achintya, it's kind of both. It's India, but also not India. And the temple is, Prabhupada explained, it's all like a letterbox. It's also the post office, but it's also not the post office. It's both. And but then what is India, or what is the post office? It means if you're internally in consciousness completely absorbed in your identity and not theoretically. If I say I want to realize I'm a servant of Krishna, it means how am I a servant of Krishna? My body, my voice, my activity, my relationships means Swarup Siddhi. That's pure devotee. A pure devotee means Swarup Siddhi. If I know who I actually am. And as long as I don't... Can you say you know who you are? Apart from theoretically I'm a servant of Krishna, can you tell me who you are? And as long as you cannot say, then you are not a pure devotee.
What do you mean? Who you are? What level? What kind?
You are in spiritual world.
What's your
identity?
Yeah, what's your identity? Yes.
And to live in Vrindavan, this is a question of consciousness. You can be in Vrindavan, in the real Vrindavan, and still you are in mind completely. And same like here.
Yeah.
If you realize that this is Krishna on the altar, then we are in Vrindavan.
Yes.
Of course, where else? Or Mayapur, it doesn't matter.
It's a question of consciousness now.
Yes.
eventually.
So then, I'm just trying to journey there.
Yeah, please, it's nice.
Why do we worship the deities if we don't think they're Krishna?
The point, no, that in order to realize it, Prabhupada said, you just do it, and then you will realize it. If I want to, now our soul has shrunken to the 10,000 part of the tip of a hair. It's so small, but the soul is actually big in the sense that the soul has senses, it has a mind, it has a form, it has a color, it has a smell, it has a sound. That the soul has all of this, but now it doesn't. It's just small. So in order to, and the soul is what is actually realizing that this is my Lord Jagannath, I am the servant. In order to do that, Prabhupada said we have to feed the soul and make it big again so that we can actually see and we can hear and we can touch. And the soul is being fed by just feeding Krishna, by hearing about Krishna, by chanting Krishna, by touching Krishna now, by doing all these different activities. And even that's the interesting thing, even though we sometimes, like when we know prasadam, you gave the example, somebody comes from outside a school class, and no, we are always eager to give them prasadam. Why? Because even though they don't know it, the soul will be nourished. And even though sometimes we don't feel anything, something is happening with our soul. We don't see it's happening because it's like the clouds, no? Our mind and so many things are still covering. But what's happening with the soul, that's a scientific thing, it's happening. Okay, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanande Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
I think this is Krishna, and I know this is Krishna.
Oh, Chaitanya
Das ist schön.
Alles schon, no?
Now we have this mic active all the time.
Yes. So we don't need the
For questions.
we don't need.
It's really good with your with the office. And I have some thoughts about the end of the lecture.
What's
Last
that?
question. Yeah, I thought that now I do not possess material life because everything belongs to Krishna. Yes, and the material world is also part of the spiritual world, and Krishna, by his mercy, can manifest to anything here, or devotees, Krishnas, and but by his mercy, if he's satisfied or pleased with us, because he wants to see our sincere desire to see. But if we have no desire, then process for all short time, yes, and willingness. If that means you can be present in the temple, if you do not follow this, then you will say this problem.
It's the condition how
Yes,
we can
yes.
actually enter it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very scientific process that we spoke about now. The theology is in the now, but we can also say Krishna is with the theology wherever it goes. And for some who it's normally in the theology, because Krishna is with the theology, it's also the spiritual.
Hare